Well, welcome to the Linguistic Data Interest Group session talking about the Tromsø recommendations for the citation of research data in linguistics. I'm going to give a brief introduction to the group and to the recommendations. I'm going to try and keep this bit to 10 minutes just to bring everyone up to speed. Andrea has also very kindly put the meeting agenda document in the chat. So while I'm telling you the story, you can also have a look through the agenda, which links to a lot of these documents. These slides also link to those documents. Feel free to make notes in the agenda as we go so we can pick them up when we come to the discussion portion in a few minutes. But welcome, my name is Lauren Gaughan. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Linguistic Data Interest Group, or the LDIG, as we tend to call it, along with Helena, who's joining us from the Arctic University of Norway, and Andrea, who's joining us from the University of Hawaii. I'm joining you from La Trobe University in Melbourne, Australia. La Trobe University is on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And as we're gathering here today, I'd like to pay respect to their elders as we begin this session. So welcome. Obviously, I'm on country here, but joining us from all parts of the world, and it's lovely to have you here with us today. This is a presentation that we gave last year at the RDA Global Adoption Week that just gives an overview of linguistics and linguistic data and the specific things that we have to consider while dealing with linguistic data. And our project that we have been working on for the last 4 or 5 years to make linguistic data more citable and transparent and part of the research conversation. Broadly, linguistics is the study of human language. More specifically, it's a data-driven social science. So we use observation of language use in all of its forms to understand about human cognition, social structure, culture, history. We can primarily record, we build records of language, and then we annotate and analyze those records. I'm working on the assumption, of course, that not everyone in this room is a linguist, but you might be a linguist with your own experiences of how you go about thinking about language. Linguistic data takes a whole variety of different forms, linked to a now unavailable video, from some sign language video data through to sentences, and this is a form of interlinear glossing, attempting to make transparent to the reader the structure of a language they are unfamiliar with. This is some acoustic data from a phonetic study. So the sounds of spoken languages have rich physical information that we can pull apart in an analysis like this. And of course, we have in the computer age, availability of big language data that we can do large corpus studies of like this. Linguists use a wide variety of data to answer a wide variety of questions, but linguists do not cite their data very much. This table is from a study of 10 years of linguistics journals that was led by Andrea here. And I feel like this chart is kind of the motivation that has kept the Linguistic Data Interest Group going for these last 4 or 5 years, where we see fully half of the articles that use linguistic data do not cite. And if they do cite, the most common form is to use a standard citation, such as APA, to point to already published data. We don't see much citation or discussion of primary underlying data, and that's what the Linguistic Data Interest Group has sought to redress. So we believe in the importance of linguistic data, that it has its own value, even beyond any specific analysis. So the Linguistic Data Interest Group was born in 2017 with the aims of valuing the management and citation of linguistic data. The biggest piece of work that has come out of this are the Tromsø recommendations for citation of research data in linguistics, named for the town of Tromsø, where the city of Tromsø, where the recommendations were drafted. You will hear all 3 of us have very different pronunciations. They're also affectionately known as the T-Rex. So if you hear us talk about that, that's the Tromsø recommendations. They are a citation model for in-text citation and bibliographic reference of linguistic data. It covers elements of granularity in terms of how specific the data is that you're pointing to. It covers different data formats, including archived and non-archived data. And it has a rich collection of templates, but also real-world examples of existing data that has been cited. And its intended audiences for researchers, but also editors of linguistic publications and archives and repositories where people store the data that they use in linguistic analysis. There is a link to the Tromsø recommendations in the meeting agenda. So you can access that, you can access these slides, and our calendar for dissemination is such that we have been working for the last 6 months actively again. It's been a little bit going on for the last 2 years for us and for everyone. So we're now picking up this work again, and our aim is to take the Tromsø recommendations and build a uptake campaign that specifically raises awareness among researchers, but uses those researchers to target uptake in journals. We know that people can have the best intentions, but the best way to make something happen is to make it a norm within the discipline. So I'm going to stop the presentation and take you to the meeting agenda, because it's in the meeting agenda that we've set out some of the plan. You'll see in the meeting agenda, we also have a link to the Linguistic Data Interest Group's asynchronous meeting that we held for the last couple of weeks. Some members of the Linguistic Data Interest Group have helped shape and refine our campaign plan to improve data citation. We're very grateful to all of the members of LD who participated, and we're now looking for people outside of linguistics who may have experience with this kind of uptake campaign to give us any insights that they have. So that will be the main topic of conversation in our discussion today. We have a timeline where we are looking to start the campaign with Linguistic Data Interest Group members, and then expand that out to the general linguistics community. And then, if we have time today as well, also having a general chat about where the Linguistic Data Interest Group is at. But to introduce you briefly to the campaign, this is a campaign model that we are emulating a campaign to get registered reports taken up by linguistics journals that was run by Timo Rutger maybe 2 years ago. We've seen this kind of asynchronous, centralized, templated campaign work really well in at least reaching out to journals and making them aware of this and making other researchers aware of registered reports. So we've taken this model. So our first page explains to people who land here through this very elegant little bit.ly link that I'll drop in the chat for you if you'd like to follow us along in this sheet. A brief introduction to the Linguistic Data Interest Group and linguistic data citation, working on the assumption that not everyone is as invested in this as we are. And then a couple of templates for journal editors, a slightly longer one for a journal editor if you want to be a little bit more verbose, give them a bit more context. And then we're also, for grants committees and awards committees, trying to encourage them to think about data citation as part of excellence in research. So we also have a template for that. And then keeping track of journals. You can see one of our LD members has already, I've had a go as well at adding some, a couple of journals I'm directly involved in. Lindsay Ferreira is another one of our LD members who's also got on board. So that is the current state of the campaign. It is the uptake of the linguistic data citation recommendations in the Tromsø recommendations is the main piece of work for the Linguistic Data Interest Group at this point in time. So I'm happy to stop sharing my screen now. We are all visible on the recording now. Sorry for the lack of heads up. But if you have any questions, I'm happy for you to pop them in the chat. If you're coming to us from a time zone where you have sleeping people in the house or something. But there's only a few of us here. So I'm also happy to just have a chat, and Helena and Andrea can maybe, if you both want to introduce yourselves, to put you on the spot here. And if there's anything you think that I've missed. Helena, who's joining us from very late at night in Norway.
Yeah.
Hi. Yes,
Hi.
good night. How are you? Nice to meet you. I was looking forward to join this session, and thank you very much for the presentation. And as I been arriving to RTA very late, thanks for your previous work, which I think is great, because I also think that data is not very well treated in linguistics, but that it depends on the field. For example, I've been working on phonetics, and usually data are usually cited, because usually you mention the corpus, for example. But in other fields like history of linguistics, which is another field I work in, is not that common. But the thing is that we are very used to the text. I mean, books and grammars and so on. So maybe I think there is not the idea that they are data and they need to be quoted beyond the quotation, the normal reference in an article or whatever. And also I think linguists, they don't know why do they have to quote those data for. And also I think they fear, because of people I know, for example, that they work with word corpus, a very big one, like thousands and thousands of words. To have this corpus, you need a lot of time and a lot of work. And I think they fear of getting that work stolen or something. They don't trust repositories. So I think there is a bit of, they don't feel confident, I think.
Andrea, oh yeah, sorry. Andrea, do you want to talk about how the 10-year survey we did looked at journals from different disciplines and how different disciplines have different habits, and that shaping our campaign to ensure we have people talking within their own subdiscipline?
Sure, yeah. In fact, Elena, the issues that you're describing right now are exactly what we've heard from many linguists worldwide. I mean, you hit all of the points exactly. People are very used to citing books because we know how to cite books, and we have a culture in linguistics of citing books and articles, but they don't know how to cite data. And they're afraid of their precious work not being appropriately valued, and they're afraid of their work being stolen in some way. So these are very common fears that you're talking about. What Lauren is referring to is the survey that the graph came from, is that we looked at 270 articles in 10 linguistics journals across a whole range of subfields and also area specialization, so different regions of the world and also different subfields. And yeah, we discovered that, yeah, by and large, people are not citing raw data that was never previously published. And part of our campaign, which involves a couple of documents, Lauren didn't talk about something that we put together called the Austin Principles of Data Citation that addresses some of these concerns. And we also wrote a position paper in the journal Linguistics that talks about exactly these kinds of fears and worries and lack of education that happens in the field of linguistics. So you are very perceptive. You're noticing the culture of our field very clearly. And so that's what we're aiming to to try to change through a campaign of education, and also, like Lauren said, of just normalizing the practice of citing data so that it's less frightening, right, and less perplexing as well.
I'll just put a link to that article as well, because it does
Thank
cover
you.
a lot of those high-level topics.
Thanks. Let's also put the Austin, I think I have that right here.
So the Austin principles is like the why of data citation, and the Tromsø recommendations is the how.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andrea, do you want to briefly introduce your work and perspective on this, and yourself?
Yeah, my name is Andrea Perez-Croker. I'm a linguistics professor at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in Honolulu. And my subfield is language documentation, where we have a long tradition of archiving data. So I think that language documentation is a little bit ahead of other fields of linguistics in that we've long practiced archiving, but we are equally poor at citing data. In fact, Lauren, could you post our other article about data citation and grammars? And so I'm hoping that we can use some of the norms and practices in language documentation to bring more citation practice to the field broadly. And I think Helena Andreasen should introduce herself as well to the group.
Yeah. Hi. Okay, so I'm Helena Andreasen, and I I work as a I'm working in the university library here in Tromsø. I have a PhD in French phonology, and I started already during my master's working with how can I say, with research data, because I was working within this this project collecting data, different varieties of French, and we were creating this database that was aimed to be openly available to everyone. So that was like in the early 2000s, and when I started working in the library, I rather quickly started working also with research data management, because we had this linguistics archive planned. And then I got to see management of data from the other side. So I had like the two perspectives, being a linguist working with data, and then working as a, how can I say, it's a research librarian, trying to help people manage their data according to good practice. So nowadays I'm leading the training program for research data management here at UIT, and I'm also one of the curators of our linguistics archive. And I also do a lot of work with PhD students, trying to get research data management into the PhD program, both here in Tromsø, but also at the I can say at a European level, because I'm working within this EU project where we try to encourage institutions to include research data management into the PhD training program. So
So as a group, we come from different disciplines. I'm also in language documentation, but I also work on co-speech gesture. So we come from different organizational contexts from 3 different countries, and from different perspectives in terms of our discipline backgrounds and relationships to archives. Andrea has also run a linguistic data archive. I've been a user of several archives and data repository structures. So the biggest challenge for us is to now make sure that when we approach people about linguistic data, sometimes the hurdle is just to get people to accept that their discipline has data at all, or that their data is something that can be cited even if it's not publicly available. And that's where trying to get people to directly talk to their sub-discipline funding bodies and journals and publications, we're hoping creates that bridge and that context. Because we could sit here and blanket mail a generic email to all of the linguistics journals we know, but we feel like that will hit a wall. It's much easier to come from within discipline expectations.
Yeah, thank you. So our goal for the next few months is, if you have a look at the spreadsheet that is our campaign, is that what we want to do is actually publicize that spreadsheet to individuals in the field, starting first with members of the LDIG, but also going beyond that and asking them to take on the responsibility of writing to the editors of journals and book series that they may be affiliated with in some way. And so our goal here today is to make sure that from the point of view of someone who might be writing an email based on the campaign, whether the campaign makes sense, right? Whether it's easy to navigate what one is supposed to do as an email writer. And so that's really what we're hoping to get feedback on here today. Lauren, do you want to share yeah, go ahead, Elena.
I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay.
Regarding the goal of today, I suggest I volunteer to translate it into Spanish, to write to the publishers, to the Linguistics Journal in Spanish, because I think it's too much English everywhere. So maybe it will need to be translated to other languages, Spanish in my case, but maybe French or whatever. I mean, to widen the, not at all the Tromsø recommendations, nor the Austin principles. I think they are okay the way they are, but to write down to the publishers, for example.
Campaign. I've just made a note in the agenda document for today under question 2 that you're volunteering to translate into Spanish. So thank you for that.
And if you just give me a minute, and if I can show you sharing the screen, I'm also I'm co-editing a journal, and it was a coincidence because like 2 months ago, I had to do this for some requirements we were given to the journal, and they told us that we had to make explicit what kind of data thing we were handling, and that's why I get into the Tromsø recommendations and the Austin principles. So I just, in the guidelines to the writers, to the authors, when you say, but you have to send this kind of file with this kind of characteristics, and so we just put, you have to engage with the Tromsø recommendations, and so if you are quoting data and so on. So I also suggested to have like a standard, I mean, like a paragraph, like this journal follows the Tromsø recommendations and so on, and also like having a budget or something like a field, but that's a suggestion.
So,
I mean,
so that I understand, you're suggesting that we come up with a paragraph that editors can simply take and put into their style sheets. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down too. Okay, that's a great idea.
I think that would be easier for the publishers.
Yeah. Anything that reduces any effort they have to put into it is really great. So thank you.
You used a phrasing, you said engage with the recommendations. Is that what you said? I like the way you phrased it when you explained it to us, Elena.
We recorded it.
Or we have a commitment.
Okay.
It's very weird because I did it in a journal specific to the history of linguistics, which is very weird to use data as we are thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it's what we have to do, because if we want our journal to have these metrics, this crazy metrics thing, we need it to say it, despite it's not a journal where we use data like in phonetics or semantics or whatever. But
yeah.
I think it's going to be the first journal in the world.
That's great. You also said something about a budget. I think you started to say something about a budget, and I don't think you finished your.
Yeah, it's like I mean, when I did it in our journal, I just put the RDA image, and I suggest to have like this paragraph, and also a picture or something, or I mean a logo.
A logo in a way. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the video conversation.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
And I just, yeah, obviously I can only take my own perspective, which is a kind of an odd one, in that I'm thinking of this in terms of what it means for people who are working on a platform. So I am thinking about this thing that we're making, and hopefully we're going to be attracting all kinds of researchers, but we know that the linguists are the ones who are ready, and now we'll be using data because it's an analytics platform, and so we'll be providing on one angle some data sets already, but we're also doing a kind of BYO. So we offer a platform and then you bring your own data. Is that something that would be worth engaging with for your group? If there are, I mean, this is the Australian one, there must be, I imagine, others around the world where you actually got the people in the moment of thinking about data and how they might engage with it, and sort of getting them at the beginning of the
Absolutely
machine, right? Rather than at the end and going, oh no, now I have to figure out how to cite it, maybe getting in at the.
So I've put a link in for you if you're working in Australian language data and you've come across Paradisec before.
Yes.
Paradisec are removing, I put a link to my own collection there just because I had a shortcut.
Fantastic.
But Paradisec have tried to remove the friction from data citation by embedding it in the website. So if you go to that, that's the top level collection page. And if you scroll down just above the map, there's a little field called Cite As, which gives you an easy click button thing. If we go to a specific subsection of the collection, as in the next link, the Cite As button generates a more granular citation. And so it does the work for you of building. The number of times I've gone to the website to copy the citation across to a publication is an example of my poor citation workflow, but also it just takes that friction out. You go to the level of granularity you want and it generates the citation for you. That kind of infrastructure level is invaluable to reducing hesitancy to take up, and also to just normalizing correct citation, and is of benefit to your platform as well, because it increases the chances of people citing it and citing it correctly with the DOI or other permanent identifier you want them to cite it with. It just increases the visibility of the platform as well. So it's a, citation is a win for everyone.
Yeah, well, that's right. And we do have people from Paradisec involved in the project at some level, I think, and there's sort of, it's all very complicated for me. I'm just coming in, but I think, that's a really good thing. And I was just thinking too about the fear of sharing data. Like, I come from a humanities background and I understand that. And I used to work with people who are very, very protective, but I can see in other fields that the repositories actually do quite a lot to protect people, so that you can cite your data. It can be in a repository. People can't just have it. There's so many layers of what's open, right? So you can have a data set in a repository that has all of the citation, but you're not sharing the data, you're just sharing the metadata and that citation. So I guess if there's that, we always feel unknowns with kind of doubts and we get a little scared, right? Whereas I guess if that was more known, that there are repositories that will actually protect your data and they're not giving it away. You can't have it. There can be layers of applications and, you need to be known to the original author and all those sorts of things. And just because you know it's there doesn't mean you can use it, right? But I guess that's just a cultural thing that needs to be looked at and made aware, like, shared more. That just because, like, the idea of open frightens people, but open doesn't mean open slather. It just means we know where things are, right? So
yeah, you're exactly right. This is another one of the common misperceptions, is that people assume that data citation entails the data is wide open. And in fact, we had another layer of misunderstanding as well when we've tried to talk to journal editors, because they were concerned that the citation of data entails that the journal is responsible for verifying the quality of the data, right? Whether or not that the reviewers of the article would be in charge of making sure that the data did in fact say what the author said it does say, and by checking the data itself. And so there was this level of concern that there would be a whole lot more work as well. But honestly, we don't do that with books. I don't think that very often journal editors are checking to see that the books that are cited or the articles that cited exist, right? And I think it's only very rarely that that editors will and reviewers will verify that the data says what the author of the article is in fact claiming that it does. That is a separate problem, right? That's a different kind of research problem than just citation, right? Whether or not people are interpreting data correctly is not what we're trying to aim for here. But yeah, you're right. You're right that it doesn't mean that data is wide open. It's a different question. And the question also about people being concerned about someone stealing the data and then publishing before the original data collector has a chance to. We've been talking to groups like the bigger groups than this for a couple of years now, and I've actually never run across a case where someone was scooped in that way because of stealing data from a repository or from an archive. The only other times I've heard of people being scooped, and it's very rarely, is when there's an abuse of power between an advisor and a student. That's really the only time. It's got really nothing to do with whether data is available in an archive. It's usually a much more closer relationship than that. Although I'm always open to hearing stories where that's been the case. So let me know if you know of any cases where someone's been scooped from a theft from a repository.
I also think if sometimes when you visit some web pages, people having their data and so on, they write down very big how to quote this data and so on. And I think that's easier to introduce the tradition or the thinking of the open thing. I mean, I don't care if they use my corpus, but they have to quote it.
Right.
I mean, like if it was a book or another journal. So if there is an easy way to reference it, I mean, it's on the web page and so on, I think it's going to be easier. For,
yes.
Can I just add on? I don't know, like when I hear campaign, I'm like, all right, you just want to get out there and talk to everyone, but I'm not sure how much energy or what level of engagement you want to have. But this is I'm just posting a link there. This is a language and technology data analysis lab project that's going on at UQ. And they currently have a webinar series that is attracting a lot of people. Apparently they do really well, and then they record it, but it's got quite a global audience. So just in case, I mean, I don't know, but they may be interested in hosting a talk or something if you wanted to try that as a, you know, because it's got that focus of data analysis specifically. So it's going to kind of be an audience that I think might be ready, or might be even all over it. I don't know. You might find friends in there. I don't know.
See some familiar faces in there, actually, and names. Yeah.
And they've got quite the need for content in a sense, because I think it's almost every week or twice a month or something like that. So I'll be doing a talk on just our basic platform in a few weeks. But yeah, I'm sure if you wanted to contact Martin and let him know, it might be of interest to that community.
Wow.
It's quite a good site, actually. Martin
Yeah,
just made it, and he said, I just started getting like thousands of users all around the world, because it's got quite good introductory stuff for computational analysis. So yeah, so anyway, just in case.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's exactly
Laura.
the kind of communities that we're hoping to, you know, we don't want it to just be the three of us endlessly emailing people, and you know, ideally not the three of us endlessly being the people who turn up to conferences as the talking about data people, but trying to use the LDIG to like find our local champions. And
well, yeah, I love that idea of actually handing the responsibility individually to everyone, and not kind of coming down from above and going, you must do this or whatever, but just say, hey, let's all just get in and do this together. And that way you get a bit more passion from people if they feel like they own it as well.
Yeah.
And just so you from outside of Australia know, in case you're curious, this is the new platform that we're working on. I think by the end of the first phase, we'll be at the end of the first phase. So it's only going to be a little tiny thing in the beginning, but we're hoping it will become a bigger thing. And that, yeah, it's really encouraging people to use data and yeah, in whatever way we can. I think it would be great to have these recommendations somewhere available for people to kind of connect all of the different dots with stuff. So yeah, we will have a website soon.
thanks for those links. Any other thoughts or questions or feelings or reservations or things you think would make it easier for repositories and programs or editors and writers to take these up? Really enjoyed both of your perspectives so far. We also had on the agenda to talk about the future of the linguistic data interest group. So we might just do that briefly now. This attempt, or you know, the campaign will kind of start with linguistic data interest group members in 2021 and will become a public campaign in 2022. I think just before the meeting, I asked Helena to maybe kick it off with a conference presentation she's giving at the start of January, so very early 2022. And I imagine that will take up, you know, the kind of first half of the year's focus for the group. But the embedding of the citation principles in publication and archiving practice kind of brings to a culmination the first 4 years of aims for the group. I'm also stepping away as a co-chair, and so it's an opportunity to think about what the future of the group might be in terms of its scope and focus and where it puts its energy. So maybe Helena and Andrea, if you have any thoughts about what that might be, just to put you on the spot, or if anyone else has any perspectives on what the future of the group might be. I will still be lurking. You will not get rid of me that easily, but it's a chance to think about the next stage of work as well.
Helena, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on this?
Well, I think so. I think that in the initial had this plan that we wrote when we applied to the RDA to become an interest group, and I think that the initial plan was after having created the citation guideline. We plan to continue working on, or turn our attention to, well, outreach and education, but I think it has been working quite well, that because I think we have been working with outreach and education all along the way, simultaneously with the development of these different documents. So I think it would be good to have like a new project in a way, deciding on one or two specific topics, addressing some aspect of research data management within linguistics. And I know that we have other people in the group that are interested in metadata. They're interested in perhaps more interdisciplinary discussions, joining, perhaps collaborating with other groups within the RDA. So I think I don't have any at this point. I don't know. I think I don't have any clear ideas right now. It might be too late for me to be very creative. I'm sorry about that. But I think that, I think it would be important to have, I mean, to continue focusing on education, but at the same time, start something, something completely new. I mean, focusing on something completely new that perhaps we haven't thought that much about yet. But I think that, I'm going to stop talking because I don't have anything more substantial to say. I'm sorry.
I think that's good. And I agree with you. I feel like the issues of citation have been topics that I felt that are within my wheelhouse to work on as a chair of this group, as a co-chair of this group. And I can see that we need to move in other directions, but I don't consider myself to be primarily a data scientist. And so exactly what the future directions are is less clear to me personally. And I feel like we need some input from the membership and possibly from our new co-chair once Lauren steps down to give us ideas about kind of what's next in the field. I'm certainly feeling like I've reached the limits of my ability to envision what's coming next. And it would be great to have some feedback from some people who are working more closely to the ground in this area. I think
it's an exciting, potentially very exciting blue sky 2022 for LDIG.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. If you're watching this recording or you're looking through the agenda and you have ideas or dreams or hopes or frustrations, I think I've always found irritation and anger to be a great work motivator. Please do get in touch. Which is kind of the end of the formal agenda for today. I believe this is a 90-minute session, or is it just have we just landed purposely? Okay, so we might conclude the recorded part of our session, unless anyone has any other thoughts or observations. I'll dawdle over wrapping up in case you do. Please unmute. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your feedback and ideas. It's always lovely to connect with other people thinking about the nitty-gritty of language data and how we all work with it in various capacities. We have the next half hour to discuss things more informally. Please also get in touch, become a member of the LDIG if you've not already. And thank you for being here.